Hello everyone and welcome to another Geometry Dash video, and in this video I'll be ranking every single funny game video from worst to best. And when I say worst to best, I'm judging these levels on of course how unique and influential they are, but also how visually appealing and fun levels are as well, so basically everything that makes a level good. I'm also not going to count collabs on other people's accounts, only the levels that are currently on FUNNYGAME's account are the ones that I'll be adding onto the list. So that means no Nemesis, no Deadly Impact, and no Unity. And yes, if you guys saw either video out the levels that push the limits, you have an idea of what the last few are going to be like. I basically dedicated my channel to FUNNYGAME at this point, but whatever. I guess I'll have to put up with my obsession with FUNNYGAME. As always, gameplay links will be in the description, so let's get started. The worst FUNNYGAME level in my opinion is Very Hard Can't Let Go. It's one of his first levels, but I didn't find anything special about it. It was on par for its time, but I saw nothing special about it, which is why it's at our 46th spot. Moving on. At our 45th spot is Maximum Risk. This is FUNNYGAME's first demon level, and again, there isn't much to talk about. I would say some of the gameplay is better and the block design is more varied, but again, not much to say here. A pretty typical 1.4 easy demon. So the next 7 levels will be auto levels, keep that in mind. Our 44th spot is Auto Theory of Everything. A lot of the level looks like Theory of Everything, which is why I put it at the worst of FUNNYGAME's auto series. But there were a few redeeming features, like this neon part. I really like this for some reason, and RobTop played it and put it on his YouTube channel, so you know it has to be good. Moving in at our 43rd spot is Auto Clubstep. Again, I really like some of the block design in this level. It was pretty creative for its time. But the one part of the level I didn't like was having the same design copied and pasted with a cube game mode. I just did not like this part for some reason. Again, it was played by RobTop and posted onto his YouTube channel, so that's an achievement. Coming in at our 42nd spot is Auto Electrodynamics. Again, it looked very similar to Electrodynamics, but there were some ideas that really stood out to me, like this shadow on certain blocks. Also, you have to love the piano part on this, just look at it. Moving in at our 41st spot is Auto Base After Base. This level is much earlier than the last few levels we've covered, but this really stood out to me for how in sync everything is. And no, I can't play the song because it's copyrighted. Moving in at our 40th spot is Auto Jumper. This level again has excellent sync, but I feel like some of the ways to keep the level in sync was much more creative. For example, look at how the ship jumps on the jump pads. It looks random, but it's still in sync. The one part that I didn't like though was the block spam in this part, but overall it was pretty in sync. Auto Cycles is later on in the list, but the 39th spot is Auto Back on Track. This was FUNNYGAME's second auto, but the one difference that this had that stood out from FUNNYGAME's other autos is that every single note was in sync with something in the level. So now we're done with the autos for now. The 38th spot is Death Step. Death Step was FUNNYGAME's Club Step remake, and the decoration and gameplay is pretty similar to Club Step. It looks pretty typical for a Club Step remake. While some parts looked pretty bland, there were some parts that had more varied block design, and there were more demon faces which added a nice touch to the level in my opinion. Moving in at a 37th spot is Royal Sky. I honestly didn't see anything super interesting in this level. Most of it was kind of plain and relied more on air decoration, and the only air decoration at the time is spamming clouds. The one redeeming feature here though was the idea of putting certain blocks on top of other blocks. I thought that was pretty creative. Moving on to our 36th spot is Genesis. I know I keep talking about block design and how good the block design is, but that's basically everything I can judge these early levels on. I especially like this part. There's very little empty space, and I really like how FUNNYGAME executed the block design here. I also like the use of shadows in this part. Moving in at our 35th spot is Lonesome. This level was more artistic. I'm assuming this is trying to look like the inside of a house or factory, but this level just didn't stand out for me. This level was pretty repetitive, using the same decorations and blocks. Moving in at our 34th spot is Vector. This is another old level and most of the decoration looked pretty bland. The one part that I do have to commend FUNNYGAME on is this background. I find it cool how FUNNYGAME made this complex of a background with only one color channel. Our 33rd spot is Checkmate. The idea of a checkerboard themed level was pretty cool, but the theme carries on for the entirety of the level, making it quite repetitive. I still really like some of the block design. Remember, this was before 3D objects were a thing, so this took a lot of effort to make. Moving in at our 32nd spot is Knock M. This level is for the most part pretty ordinary, but I really liked what FUNNYGAME did with the gradients here, before gradients were a thing, and this part where you can't see, so you have to use the upper half of the level as reference. This was also the first level where FUNNYGAME used those curvy pillars, which FUNNYGAME still uses today. Our 31st spot is Chronos Fantasy. Chronos Fantasy takes inspiration from a bunch of different levels, Theory of Everything, X-Step, and Can't Let Go. Nothing much else to say, so let's move on. Moving on at our 30th spot is Requiem. This level is probably the most complex level I've covered on this list so far. I really like the complex pulsing decoration and block design, and this lava theme part is actually pretty good and well executed in my opinion. Moving in at our 29th spot is Atlas. This came out when gradients first became a thing, so the use of gradients were amazing when it first came out. This was also the first use of crystals. While Another World kicked off the trend of crystal levels, this was the first level to have a very early version of them. Our 28th spot is Except V2 Rebirth. I found this level to be surprisingly better than most of FUNNYGAME's older levels. If you think FUNNYGAME Holiday was the first to have pulsing blocks, you're wrong, it's this level. The block design also stood out. Almost every single block had another block inside of it to give it more detail. Air Deco was also used consistently and gave the level a lot more detail as well. Overall, I think this is a crappier version of FUNNYGAME Holiday. Moving in at our 29th spot is Crazy Bolt. A lot of objects in this level look like, as the name suggests, a bolt. This level came out even earlier than Except V2 Rebirth, but had more detailed block design. At least in the beginning. The second half looked pretty meh for me. There were some designs that looked cool, but this part, for example, is pretty underwhelming. Moving in at our 26th spot is Abyss. This is the first semi-recent level that is on this list, and this level was made in early 2.0. This was definitely not FUNNYGAME's best work, which was proved later, but I still really liked the effects in it, especially the brick background. It really shows the illusion of distance. The only thing I don't like about this level is how the block design is very basic. As you can see here, there were only two types of blocks, but at the same time, every level in early 2.0 had no block design. Moving in at our 25th spot is Alphabet M. The reason why I put this level so high on the list is because there were actually a lot of new ideas in this level, aside from it being good looking. While the gameplay was pretty simple, it was pretty detailed. My favorite part was the last ball section. It looked neon-like, and the blocks pulsed colors. This was also the first FUNNYGAME level that I could find that had shadows. It's very subtle, but it's right here. Moving in at our 24th spot is Auto Cycles. There are a few reasons why I put this level so high. One, because it's FUNNYGAME's first level, but two, this was one of the first auto levels that ever existed, and also one of the first levels to have a flashing background, the first being the Lightning Road. This level is overall very smooth, unlike all of the other buggy autos in 1.2, and synced extremely well with the song. Not as good as Auto Back on Track, but still excellent sync. So I want to stop here for a second before I get into number 23. I went over half of these levels pretty quickly, and that's because there isn't much to talk about in FUNNYGAME's older levels, so I'll try to get into more detail with the rest of these levels. For me, this is the border between a good level from FUNNYGAME and an excellent one. So our 23rd spot is a bit more recent, Don't Cry. This level was made in late 2.0, and it was when FUNNYGAME took a long break from creating, his last level being Lonely Travel, but then he returned with a collaboration with Galzo, Nemesis, and then this level. While not being super creative or memorable, I really liked some of the art. For example, the butterfly and spiderweb along with the foreground looks pretty impressive, but my favorite part would have to go to almost the end of the level, with a rainbow background. Moving on at our 22nd spot is FUNNYGAME's last 2.0 level, Simplism. This is a collab between FUNNYGAME and Loser Chick. While Loser Chick is an excellent art creator, FUNNYGAME's part really stands out to me. The 3D blocks are something I haven't really seen before and was the most memorable part to me. I also really like the Last Wave and Robot. While all of us are using basic shapes as blocks, FUNNYGAME used shapes that are seemingly random. Moving in at our 21st spot is Nova, with a 4. This level was FUNNYGAME's first 2.1 level after he supposedly quit. In this level, there was less focus on block design and more on effects. The effects were pretty simple but varied. It's not like a background that stays on the screen for 10 seconds like most of his levels, it's constantly changing. Another strong suit this level has is its gameplay and sync. This level is super fun and none of us knew just how good FUNNYGAME was at making gameplay. Moving in at our 20th spot is Deadly Storm. This is another artistic level that was made quite recently, most of the decoration being storm themed. There was close attention to detail in both the blocks and the backgrounds. The one part that I have to criticize though is how the blocks here looked like they came out of a modern level and doesn't really fit with the background. Also, the gameplay is pretty annoying, especially this wave part where I can barely see anything. My favorite part would have to go to the raindrop section. It looks so realistic and it looks like he just copied and pasted a photo into the editor. Moving in at our 19th spot is Titanium Buster. This was FUNNYGAME's first 2.1 level after being inactive for a while. While FUNNYGAME is known for pushing each update to its full potential, he didn't really do that with 2.1 and this has disappointed some people, but I still really liked this level. This level is very similar to Nemesis, his comeback collaboration, so I didn't really find this level to be too memorable. The first half is completely based on effects and actually has really fun gameplay. The second half is a boss fight which again is very similar to Nemesis and has very similar attacks. The boss itself and the city in the background were well designed. The one problem that I have with this level is that the boss was just too easy, at least the first phase of the boss. Just remember what attacks to hold and which ones to not. My favorite part would have to be the second phase of the boss, just because of how dramatic it is, and the spam clicking part at the end is the most memorable part in my opinion. Moving in at our 18th spot is Gamora. This easy and artistic level is all space themed. This level obviously focused on the backgrounds more than anything else. Most of these backgrounds are a bunch of stars, but in my opinion, the planet was especially impressive. The lens flare getting blocked by the blocks just comes to show how much detail FUNNYGAME puts in his levels. However, the block design was not too detailed. It was mostly 2 blocks copied and pasted across each section. Like, look at this, pretty cool design, right? Well, it gets copied and pasted like 100 times. Moving in at our 17th spot is Persona. The beginning of the level starts off calm, but still has detailed backgrounds. Like, look at this background for example. I really like the blurry effect that FUNNYGAME made. And also this part is a rainbow background that is so subtle. The drop is very similar to Nova. The background changes once almost every second, and I have to praise FUNNYGAME for the amount of effort it took for him to make these backgrounds. They just all go so well with the music, and is a really good song choice by the way. The gameplay is also pretty fun, even though it's a bit unpredictable at times. Again, there isn't much variation in block design, but that's not big of a problem if every section is like a second. Moving in at our 16th spot is Dreamer. This is the lowest spot out of any 1.9 level, which, spoilers, was FUNNYGAME's peak in his creating career. But in my opinion, this level stood out the least to me. Some sections are quite repetitive, like this one is just Flappy Bird, and this wave goes on for quite a while. While the block design wasn't super complex, it was still very unique. My favorite part was this part right here. I really love what FUNNYGAME did here with the black gears in the block design and the clocks going out of control. Moving in at our 15th spot is Proxima. This level uses the red and black hell style that we all hate, but this was executed much more differently. Some parts are memorable while others are pretty meh. For example, the beginning actually looks awesome, but the part followed by it doesn't, and 2 of these sections are boss battles. This level was also FUNNYGAME's most difficult level, reaching the difficulty of an insane demon. I personally think the most memorable part was the first boss fight against, God knows who. The effects in the background along with the boss looked really nice. The only complaint that I have in this level is that the attacks in both the first and second boss fights are very choppy and look unnatural. Moving in at our 14th spot is Thanatos. This level has effects in some parts and art in others, and takes on a variety of themes. This level is also super long, being almost 3 minutes long. It first starts off black and white, then uses a fire theme, and then my personal favorite, which looks like it's on the edge of an ocean. It's pretty underdecorated, but I really love this part for some reason. Then there's a spider theme part, a pink and blue glow theme part, but then 3/4 into the level is a boss fight, and it's a giant bird shooting magical attacks at you. The attacks themselves are pretty creative, but the attacks along with the back and foreground just make the level look messy. The other criticism I have is a fire part at the beginning. The background is good, but the block design and foreground is pretty underwhelming. Moving in at our 13th spot is Puzzle Trials. This level is a memory demon inspired by a bunch of puzzle games. Most of the gameplay is pretty annoying, but I can't really complain because it's memory based and I have a terrible memory. I find the first part to be the most memorable. I really like the idea of avoiding the mines based off of the numbers, just like the game. Both the click to change, as shown here, and the triple mode parts are both creative ideas, but they're super annoying. And the FUNNYGAME boss fight looks awesome, but you can barely see anything. Overall, this level has some really good concepts and decoration, but the gameplay is annoying. Moving on, at our 12th spot is Cutter Knife. This level relied mostly on its backgrounds, even though most of the block designs were varied. This flashing electric background along with the glitchy blocks is actually pretty creative, and there isn't a lot going on this flashing glow background. My favorite part would have to be the ending. It had pretty good gameplay and the background was subtle but detailed. My only criticism here is that while most of the block designs were good, there were some that looked like there was no effort put into them. This is just a gear and a music note copied and pasted over and over again, and I can barely see a gear in this block, and I'm seeing this block multiple times. Moving in at our 11th spot is Mysterio. I forgot that this level existed, and I'm actually really surprised that I haven't remembered this level. The entire level is detailed everywhere, the foreground, the background, the block design, basically everything, and still ends up looking flawless. The forest was the first part that just stood out to me. I mean, just look at the background. My favorite part would have to be this butterfly part, just because of how much detail there is. I also haven't seen anything like the free flying part with the city background. The last time I saw free flying was in Simplism. So that is the last of FUNNYGAME's 2.1 levels, and I just wanted to talk about them for a second. There are a lot of people that say that FUNNYGAME's levels have gotten worse since the 2.1 update came out, but since it did come out, people have expected FUNNYGAME to make another super revolutionary level that he does with every update. Even though he wasn't able to pull that off in 2.1, you still can't deny that the later levels that I discussed previously still looked awesome, and I think the reason why FUNNYGAME is called not as good is because the expectations are too high for him. The rest of the community, along with the level editor, are making it so all of his potential ideas and levels are being used up. As far as his new levels go, I still find FUNNYGAME to be up there as a creator, and still one of the best, but not the best. So with that said, the next levels were made before 2.1. Our 10th spot is Hologram. This level is neon and retro themed and shines the most in its backgrounds. Those backgrounds are being this grid and this other green pulsing background that is shown briefly. Many of the blocks are repeated and pretty simple looking, but still looks nice. The retro theme was executed nicely in these blocks. My only criticism is that some of the sections looked repetitive. For example, this part is just Flappy Bird, and this part has nothing going on it and lasts for 11 seconds. Moving on, at our 9th spot is Reincarnation. This level was made in 1.9 and it was based off of mostly effects. I don't even know how the background and the ball part was done. Also, I believe this was the first time the parallax effect was done, and seriously, are you kidding me? How is this even possible in 1.9? I also really like this part. Both the gear and the background movements looked really smooth. My only complaint is that some sections have little variation in them. This section is only candles and spikes, and we have 2 sections that are made up of only pulsing squares and gears. I don't find these parts to be super memorable. Overall, this is an excellent level for its time, and the effects that were used looked insane. Moving on, at our 8th spot is Another World. I'm putting this level above Reincarnation because of its influence. The first half of this level is crystal themed and almost all the blocks look like crystals. This started a trend in the community, copying FUNNYGAME's designs and making more crystal levels. The second half of the level is almost completely based off the equalizer effect FUNNYGAME invented in FUNNYGAME Holiday, and with 4 color channels, it looked a lot more unique this time around. Moving in at our 7th spot is Rainbow Dust. I may be a bit biased with this choice because this is literally the first online level I've ever played. Some of the block designs in particular stood out to me. I don't know what to call these, but while they were overused in this level, that design stood out to me, not to mention the blocks with a rainbow trail behind them. This part is pretty empty, but these blocks completely make up for it. The background is also alternating very quickly, and so many blocks were showcased in such a little amount of time here. I didn't find any real flaws here to be honest, but that's probably because I'm biased. Moving on, at our 6th spot is La Campanella. Some parts of this level is piano themed and other parts look like they came straight out of Death Moon. I found both these parts to be extremely memorable. Other parts looked pretty underdecorated even though it had some pretty creative ideas. Like, there isn't much happening here, but the ramp still looked pretty nice and original. Overall, there are some parts that were super memorable, others weren't, but at least they were still original. Moving in at our 5th spot is Death Moon. This level was posted on FUNNYGAME's emergency account, Caustic, so technically his level shouldn't be on the list, but I'm making an exception here because the level was entirely made by FUNNYGAME. This extra long beast of a level is flawless from beginning to end. The gameplay syncs so well with the song, and the decoration consisted of a bunch of different backgrounds, such as these 2 different types of squares being shown, these arrows, and I can't forget the end, where the background alternates. The block design both seemed original and varied. Many of them look like what seems to be a collage of the same block or in some cases the same spike. The last thing I want to highlight in this level is this slow wave section. Like, look at this block design. Only a genius can come up with art like this. Overall, everything in this level is flawless. The gameplay, decoration, and song all played a part in giving tension to this level. Moving in at our 4th spot is Serious. After FUNNYGAME helped Triaxis make Unity, which isn't on this list because it isn't posted on his account, he immediately started working on his next level made in 2.0, and this level was so detailed and so influential. The standards for an early 2.0 level like this was low to say the least, but I found the level to be super detailed. FUNNYGAME really showed the community what you can do with the move trigger. The parallax effect was used, but it was used even better than Reincarnation, and afterwards it was a pretty commonly used effect. Most of the block design was detailed but somewhat repetitive, but that doesn't matter if the foreground covers it. The backgrounds in the first half were tech related and they all had a bunch of depth in them, but the second half was even more memorable. It was a fast-paced boss fight in which the boss shot projectiles and lasers at you. The same background was existent in almost the entirety of the boss fight, but there were changes made to that background like these chains and these circles. The gameplay in the second half was sort of annoying, but the level is memory based and I can't really blame FUNNYGAME because all the gameplay at the time was horrible. Moving in at our 3rd spot is Lonely Travel. I know most of you will disagree with me here, but in my opinion, Lonely Travel is superior to Serious. I've had so many memories playing this level and trying to beat it, and it took me over 1,000 attempts. This level is 6 minutes long and takes on a variety of themes. This level is mostly black and white until halfway in where we see our first bit of color. While many of FUNNYGAME's levels have a lot going on in them, this level was way more calm and simple, but everything in this level was executed perfectly. I absolutely love the atmosphere that each part brings. The beginning looks like you're standing near the window of a house, and while there's only clouds and grass blocks here, it still has so much atmosphere. And while the film part is pretty simple, there still looks like a lot going on. This part has a very detailed background, and I found the spikes changing every time you click to be a pretty interesting concept, even though I remember this part bugging a few times. My favorite part would have to be the cloud part. Both the foreground and background were made of clouds, which gave the illusion of depth. There were also what looks like scraps of grass and dirt, and it looks more visible when they're closer to the screen. While I could be talking about this level a lot more, the last part I wanted to highlight is the sky theme. While most of this level is black and white, this part comes out of nowhere. The use of gradients made the clouds look super realistic, and I really love the atmospheric but simple floating island designs. All of this works so perfectly with the song. I know I missed some parts, but I'm moving on now. So our second spot is FUNNYGAME Holiday. This level was made in 1.7 and was the first effect level ever made, and while I wasn't playing at the time, I can assure you that this was mind-blowing when it came out. When XStep V2 Rebirth was the first use of pulsing blocks, these pulsing blocks were a lot cleaner, and as a result people started using pulsing blocks a lot more. They're used in almost every rated level now. One thing I didn't realize was that this equalizer effect was not done with 4 color channels, but only 1, and the comment section spammed me for making that mistake. And now looking at this, I find this to be even more impressive now. I don't even know how to do this. Lastly, I found the Space Invader art to be pretty impressive, and at the very end, there's another equalizer effect. So if you've seen either top 10 lists that I made on levels that push the limits, this level that I've chosen as number 1 is obvious to you. It's Revolution. While not all this level is original, it introduced a bunch of new effects that were later commonly used in the 1.9 update. This level is basically the reason why the 1.9 update was so great. It showed all creators what things the 1.9 update can do, so this level literally started a revolution in Geometry Dash. I'm not going too deep into this level because I explained it twice already, but this rainbow effect was the most impressive one. Remember, only 4 color channels were existent at the time, and while moving objects weren't a thing yet, FUNNYGAME was able to create the illusion of motion using gradients here. Overall, this is basically the 1.9 update in one level, and probably the most important level in Geometry Dash. So, what did you think of my list? I try to judge this level off of my opinion, so if you disagree with the placement, feel free to criticize me in the comments. I promote civilized discussion, but not arguments. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and a comment. I read all comments, and as always guys, this is GD Flaaroni signing out.